So last week we spoke about Megillah. This week we speak about Mishloach Manos and the Matones le'Eviyonim. So I don't know what sources you have, but we start off with the Trumas edition. That is the fundamental in Siman Kuf Yud Aleph. בני אדם השולחים לחבריהם בפורים חלוקים וסדינים וקיי גבנה יוצאים ידי משלוח מונס או לא. So what is unique about the Trumas edition? It was one of the greatest gedolim in Ashkenaz. And most of them in Haga Ashkenaz are based on two Ashkenazi early gedolim, the Maharil and Trumas edition. The Trumas edition is called Avi Minhagei Ashkenaz. And the Trumas edition actually formulated the Shilas and not only the Chuvas. And he writes that himself. These were not questions he was necessarily asked by other people, but when he thought important shuvas, important halachas that need to be explained and shared, that's the Tumas edition. So the question is, could you send garments, gifts, jewelry? And the answer is clear. Ein yotzim behem, denera tam de mishloach monos kedei sheyera kol echad. So the Tumas edition writes, you could only send food because the rationale, the reasoning of Mishloach Manos is to ensure that everybody could sit down with his family and rejoice and have enough food to eat. And that is why you need to send food. Before we even move on to source number 2, I want to make a comment. I don't think this Tumas edition is a gewaltige Chiddush. I actually think it's Mefurish in Rambam. Let's scroll down to source number 4. We scroll down on this page. Source number 4, we read the Rambam. Perik Weiss, Halchos Megillah. Keitzad choyve se'ude zu. שיוכל בוסו ויתקן סודנו הכפייה שנמצא ידוי ושויסי יין עד שישתקה וירדם בשכרות וכן חייב אותם לשלוח שתי מונה של בוסו או שמאמין את נפשו או שני מיני יוכל לחבר שנאמר או משלוח מונס איש לרעיהו. So it is clear in the Rambam that Mishloach Manos and Sudas Purim are one and the same. It's in the same halacha. And the Lashon and it is clear as daylight in the Rambam. There needs to be food. He gives 3 different options. It's all about food. Why? That's what the Tumas edition explains. And the Rambam is not even a big Chiddush because both in Bavli and in Yerushalmi, in Bavli Dav Zayin, an equivalent sug in Yerushalmi, we have various different stories of Gedola Amerom that sent Mishloach Manos to their friends, and all of them sent food. We have the story of Rabbi and Rabbi Oshaya. They sent meat and wine. And then a story of Amerom that sent spices and zangavil, but they all sent food. So the Tumas edition is not a gewaltige Chiddush. It is clear. Mishloach Manos is to enhance and to ensure that everybody has what to eat. And nobody will sit down with his family at the Purim table without food on the table. Comes along Manos HaLevi. Who is the Manos HaLevi? Reb Shlomo Alkabetz. And his most famous chibur is Lechodoidi. We all sing Lechodoidi Friday night. Reb Shlomo Alkabetz was a Mishorer. He was a poet and a darshan and a makubal. And twice in Megillah says, so we have both sources. He writes, Mishloach Manos is to enhance brotherhood and love and midos and ahavas reim. Mishloach Manos kizeh roimis ke bagud achas u'ba'ava v'acho. Hefach ma she'omer atzoyim mefuzah mefoyer. And he goes over this again. Oisem Yudan Simcha v'mishta v'yom to Mishloach Manos Yeshai, k'mo she'oinonam ki yeshechod lekol kol echad l'mechaveiroi. Just like they stood together in prayer, they stand together in joy. So the Manos HaLevi says, Mishloach Manos is about to enhance brotherhood and simcha and ahavas reim. Ba'agudo achas. Many Achronim understood that there's two separate reasons, and they dealt with halachic issues based on two understandings. We scroll down to the Ramah, and we'll discuss the Chassam Sofer. Source number 5 on our sheet. The Ramah writes at the end of Siman Tov Reish Tzaddik Im shelo yachmonis l're'eu v'hu eino roitze lekablam o moichaloi yotzo. Mishnah Brura oy moichaloi rotzeloi mesho oimer areini kilus kabadi. What does he mean to say? What does he mean to say? I think the Mishnah Brura is troubled. The concept of mechila is a concept of choshen mishpat. We just had a magnificent Yarchikal in Yerushalayim. And every time I give the Shir Psicha for the Yarchikal and then another Shir, and it's always such an inspiration. And the Sugya was Dinei Halavoah. Mechila is part of Dinei Halavoah. When you have a lien on someone, somebody owes you money, there's a concept of Mechila. If you forgive him or you forgo the money, and you say, Machul Lacha, you cannot come a day later and say, I want my money back. No, you're a Machul. So the only concept of legal halachic mechila is when somebody owes you something. He owes you money. Whether it's the result of a loan, or the result of a purchase, or the result of damages that you need to compensate them for. But whenever you owe someone money, there's a concept of mechila. But there is no concept of mechila by Mishloach Manos. He doesn't owe you anything. Mishloach Manos essentially is a gift. He needs to give Mishloach Manos, but he doesn't need to give to you. And there's no such a thing, mechila, by a gift. I want to give you a gift. And you say, Amoichel. It is popular language to say Amoichel. And that is exactly what the Mishnah Brura means. He says, not that this is a legal concept of mechila, but hareinu ke'ilu eskebalti. And a person tells you, we're friends, I want to buy you a gift. What would you like? And you say, no, please, Amoichel. That's not the halachic concept of mechila. You can't be moichel a gift. You could be moichel alone. So the Mishnah Brura just explains, what does it mean, moichel hareinu ke'ilu eskebalti? Comes along the Chassam Sofer, and the Chassam Sofer asks. But at the end of the day, if you didn't give because he didn't take, then you did nothing. You did nothing. You achieved no goal. Why was he yaitzer? So the Chassam Sofer says that a mom must be based on the Manos Alevi. Let's learn this small section. Ruisi b'zeh shnei ta'amim. ותרומס הדשא כוסף כדי שיהיה הרמוך על הבעלי שמחס. אולי לא יספיק לו סעודוסוי, הרי חברו מסייעוי. It's not exactly the lashon, but that is essentially what he's saying. עיין שם. ויש להם אפילו יסלי טובו. מקום מוקם תיקנו כך שלא לבייש מי שאין לו, כי בסוף מסכת אז ומכן. כשם שהם באמס אין לו ידעי ספוק אין במחילו זה כלום, אפילו יש להם מקום לא ימחול משום שלא לבייש. אך בספר מונס הלוי, להרבה שולם וריוס, הפך מרגילוסוי של צער שאומר מפוזר המפרד. פירוש, במוקם של אוליאס, עם אחד, הנה מפוזר מפרודם במחלקס. תקנו משלוח מונס, אם כן יש להם מכיוון ששולח, והרחי בוסוי, אף על פי שזה מייכלוי, כבר יוצא דרך בוסוי. How strange it would be to me that the psak of the Ramah is based on the Manos Alevi, and it goes against the Trumas Adeshin. Most of the Piskei HaRamah and the Menhagam are based on Trumas Adeshin. Trumas Adeshin atara lerosho shel HaRamah. I don't think the Ramah was aware of the Manos Alevi. They were contemporaries. The Ramah was an Ashkenazi Gadol in Krakow in Poland. Manos Alevi was a Sephardi Makobel in Sfas. I don't think they ever heard of each other. But my tema is even larger than that. I think if someone would approach Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, I want to talk to you about your machlokes with the Trumas Eidish and Shloich Manos. Rav Shlomo Alkabetz would be shocked. And he would respond, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? I have a machlokes with the Trumas Eidish. Trumas Eidish was a great posek 300 years ago. I'm not a posek. I'm a darshan. I learned Kabbalah. I am a poet. I'm a mishorer. Never occurred to me to have a machlokes with the Trumas Eidish. That's insane. Especially, as I explained a few minutes ago, the Trumas Eidish is the Rambam. It's not even Trumas Eidish. And the Rambam goes all the way back to the Bavli and Yerushalmi. It is clear from all these sources that Mishloach Morris needs to be food. If it's about Av over Reus, why does it need food? When you give somebody a Longines watch or an Omega or a pen, a Mont Blanc, I don't know about icons, or you buy him a Streimel, those modern big Streimel that cost $5,000, you're going to make him much more happy than sending him some kugel or some gefilte fish. So if it's about Av over Reus, why does it need to be food? I'm not mezalzem the Manos Halevi, but in my opinion, the Manos Halevi comes on top of the Trumas Eidish and not instead of the Trumas Eidish. There is no machlokes. Everybody agrees that Mishloach Manos is all about Sudas Purim, as we saw in the Rambam. However, the Manos Halevi writes, there is an additional motive, an additional rationale, not another one. It's not either me or him. It's me on top of him. When you send Mishloach Manos, send it in a way, send it in a fashion that will also enhance Achvat Vereis. It is clear that the Manos Halevi is drash. When Homan says, what does he mean? Is he complaining that Eden don't have Achdus? Why would it bother Homan that Eden don't have Achdus? The Gemara in the Yud Gimel and Megillah explains, what does he mean? When there is a state, let's say a state in America or a city, all the Jews live in one city, all the Irish live in one city, all the Mormons live in Utah, and you're going to destroy them all, then there's going to be a huge void. Financially, socially, there's going to be a huge void, like a huge pit. So Homan says the Jews aren't centered in one place. They're mafuzah and mafayda. A few of them here, a few of them here. If you kill them all, nothing is going to happen. There will be no financial loss, no social upheaval. That was what Homan had in mind when he said mafuzah and mafayda. So it's clear that the Manos Halevi is a drash, is v'derech drush. But I don't mind to add the Manos Halevi on top of the Trumas Eidish. What do I mean to say? All year round, sometimes we send food to a neighbor. You know, we have a neighbor, the lady had a baby Thursday afternoon. We want to help them. So we cook for them. And we send them fish and chunt, and we send them kugel. But Purim, you sent it in a beautiful basket with a beautiful little red ribbon tied at the top of it. When you want to help a neighbor for Shabbos, you don't buy a basket and you don't tie it up with cellophane paper with a red ribbon. Just getting up for a moment. So I already started getting Mishloach Manos. So an hour ago, I got a Mishloach Manos. Yeah, I took it apart. So when you make kugel or chunt for your neighbor that had a baby, you don't wrap it up like this. This is Mishloach Manos. So I say, the food you send is Trumas Eidish. The red ribbon, that's the Manos Halevi. That's the Manos Halevi. So the Manos Halevi says, there's an additional motive on Purim. Of course, it's about food. And no one disagrees with the Tumas edition. But if you're sending food, send it in a way that'll make people smile. Send it in a way that'll make people happy. Send it in a way that'll say, what a wonderful person this is, an effort. What a beautiful basket he sent. And that is why it's hard for me to accept the Chassam Sofer, because the Chassam Sofer argues that the Ramo wrote a kula based on the Manos Halevi against the Tumas edition. That cannot be. Ksav Sofer, the son of the great Chassam Sofer, and that's our next source. Source number 8. Let's see the Ksav Sofer, if we can have it on our screen. Masha nistapakto, misha shaleach mones l're'eu ve'ena mekabel yodea, misha lachlo. Em yatso yedei chayvaso, em yotze mishalech, mitzvah mishloach Manos. Lefimriat nereli detalye betama. Letama de trumas adeshen, de mitzvah mishloach Manos kedei lamaris chasoron mishieno, mistavish yotze gam kisheni l'chaver yodea mishloach lo. סוף כל סוף הגיע לתכלס המכוון. ויש מצווה ביוסה כמו מצווה סדוקה. מה אתם בסייסר? אבל הטעם שהם חיבור שולם וריוס, וכן משמע איש לרעהו בוודאי אינו יוסה, כשאינו מקבל יודע מי המשלח. So the Ksav Sofer writes, if the recipient doesn't know who sent it, according to the Manos Halevi, you weren't Yotze. According to the Tumas Edition, you were Yotze. So, some 45 years ago, I think, 40 years ago, I was living in Kiryat Sanz and Netanya, and my little boy Binyamin, today, Baruch Hashem, oh wow, he's 50 years old, he has a beautiful shul, his Hasidim love him. He was a little boy, and I sent with him two Mishloach Manos to two neighbors. One was a Rosh Yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva in Kiryat Sanz at the time, a Goen Rebbe Yosh Meller, and I was a Magichi in the yeshiva. And I sent him the first Minchas Osher that came out was on Baba Kama, together with a bottle of wine and a cake, whatever it was. The other neighbor was a young couple with two little kids. So I sent him a Mishloach Manos with two gragers. You know what a grager is. You know, we make noise. Today, kids don't longer have gragers. They have explosives and terrible stuff. I gave an Issa. Nobody could come with any explosives into my shul or into Shchuna generally. So I sent the other one for the two little kids, like two little toys. Mincha, I meet the Rosh Yeshiva, and the Rosh Yeshiva tells me jokingly with a smile on his face, I imagine the two gragers that you sent, one is for me and one is for my Rebbetzin. I understood that something went wrong, and my bright little kid confused the two Mishloach Manos. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, okay, one for him, one for the Rebbetzin. I don't know what the other guy did with the Minchas Osher. But anyway, that's a question of the Ksav Sofer. I sent Mishloach Manos, and the Shaliach forgot to tell them who sent it, and there was no settler. So the Ksav Sofer says, according to the Tumas Edition, it's even better. It is all about Sudas Purim. He has food, he'll have what to eat. But according to the Manos Halevi, I wasn't Yotze. I could agree with the Ksav Sofer. Why is that? Because he bases a chumrah on the Manos Halevi. That's okay with me. Fundamentally, it's about food. You also need to make the person happy. So that means the Manos Halevi on top of the Tumas Edition, not instead of the Tumas Edition. So the Chassam Sofer writes a kula based on Manos Halevi, and that's problematic. The Ksav Sofer writes a chumrah based on Manos Halevi, and that is okay with me. Next source brings us to another Chassam Sofer. Davahoven, kol ma shemru Chazal, ploini b'shlichus or einoi b'shlichus, rotzei lomer b'shlichus, kamoisoi, אוי אינם בשליחס כמו זה, אבל שליח אפילו קוף יוכל לשליח אלה שאין כמו זה. נפקא מינה, היכן שהקפיד התורה שבדין בעצמו יעשה, אלה שאוניונים שליחס שגם יסוסי, לזה בעניין שליחס. דילה בכל היה וכמו זה, אבל היכן שאומר התורה שיש לך שליח גם אין שליח מונס, זה סגי אפילו עד קוף, והובן. כי כבר טוב בו גדולים וטובים ממני. So the Sefer explains, when you need to do something, you need to do a mitzvah, and you send another one to do it instead of you, he needs to be a bar shlichus. Cheresh shoyte v'kotten, there's a Mishnah in Gittin, cannot bring a get. The husband needs to give the get. The Pasuk says, "V'nosam b'yadav," because of the Sefer Krisis, "V'nosam b'yadav." So we need a bar shlichus. But Mishloach Manos, the Torah doesn't say you need to give, but rather you need to send. And if the mitzvah is to send, you could send with anyone. He does not need to be a bar shlichus. Whom does he mean? And there's a reason why he doesn't write who he means. He means his great Shver, Rabbi Akiva Eiger. And this sod is revealed by one of the Talmidim of the Chassam Sofer, Reb Cheskiyahu Flot, who wrote a sefer named Likutei Chover Ben Chaim. So one of our technical people, I think it would just be interesting to look for the Sharblat of Chover Ben Chaim, just to see who he was. He was one of the younger Talmidim of the Chassam Sofer. And his sefer is very interesting. And he is Hoylech Rachil Umegala Soid. And he writes that Rabbi Akiva Eiger asked the Chassam Sofer a gewaltige kasha, how do we send Mishloach Manos with children? A child is not a bar shlichus, as I quoted the Mishnah in Gittin Daf Chav Beis. Hakol b'sheile lehovi yisaget chutz micheres sheite v'kotten. And if a child is not a bar shlichus, you're not makayim the mitzvah. And this was the Chassam Sofer's response. And the Chassam Sofer said, no, by Mishloach Manos there's no need for a bar shlichus. If Megillah says to would say, V'litein monoism odam lachaveiroi, like because of the Sefer Krisis, v'nosam beyodo, we will need the concept of shlichus shel odam kamoisoi. But if the Torah says, if the Megillah says mishloach monos, I could send with anyone, and it is considered I sent. He could be a non-Jew, he could be a Jew, he could be a Kohen, he could be a Kohen, he could be a monkey or an ape. And that is why by Mishloach Manos we do not need a bar shlichus. So the Chassam Sofer doesn't want to mention the name, and he writes, Gedolim v'toivim mimeni, and that must be Akiva Eiger. So once again, does that depend whether it's Achva v'Reyes? No. I think this would be agreed upon by everyone. Let us scroll down a bit. And I want to get to the Divrei Yoyo, Satmar Rebbe. This Satmar Rebbe was one of the great tzaddikim of our time, of our generation. So he deals with the question, could a man send Mishloach Manos to a woman? The Ramor writes, a man shouldn't send to a woman because if he sends to an almana, there might be a question of Sofek Kedushin, which seems to be somewhat far-fetched. The Binyan Tzion, and maybe we should scroll back up, just have a look at the Binyan Tzion, because the Satmar Rebbe talks about the Binyan Tzion. Source number 10. L'shloach. Shuvas Binyan Tzion semem dera d'stapikim. Maybe ba'atzim amonas v'lo de shliach. Im yotza. Kim nechsid mishloach. Maybe the Binyan dafka de shlichus. And the binyan siyan is mefalpon, and he quotes some cipher. So maybe my question would also depend on the two different reasonings. According to Mitzvah, why would it make a difference whether I send alone or Eidish Shaliach? But maybe if it's Achva V'Reyes, would make a difference. Comes the Satmar Rebbe, a little spark of genius, even though I don't agree with him. Divrei Yoyo. Nerafi is that the Pima de Isa B'Chuvas Binyan Siyan Shenestapek. Mishloach Manos im Yoitze Kishanoitze na Mishloach Manos Batzmo Ki Efsher Eina Yoitze Ela Al Yedei Shliach. ולא ראיתי בפנים בספר הנ"ל, כי אין הספר לפני, רק באורחס חיים הביאו בקיצור. Today, when anybody writes, I didn't see the sefer, don't believe him, because everybody has platforms. You can see everything. ויש להם בדקנו גם מסבור. וכשאין לפונה ושולח אל השליח, אוי זה קורן שדעתי עולב שמתוך כך זוכרהו.
כל הלילה.
המתאים הוא לפונה.
Charles Appel has to mute. Charles.
Yeah, I heard some background. אבל אם הוא לפונה ונושא, אין יקר אהבה סוי. So Samuel Rebbe makes a powerful point, and he says, when you send somebody Mishloach Manos, makes him happy because I'm on his list. He thought about me. But if you see him to bump into him on the street, and out of his basket he takes something Mishloach Manos, or you happen to be in his house and he gives him Mishloach Manos, you think to yourself, I'm not on his list. He didn't really think about me, doesn't really care about me. He just saw me, so he felt awkward and unpleasant, so he gave me. So the Satmar says, especially according to the Manos HaLevi, the Binyan Siyan has a point. If you send it, that is more achva v'reis. If it is all about food, it will make no difference whatsoever. So we have many, many sources in the Achronim that are mefalper based on the two different approaches. And I once again want to reiterate and go over what I said from the beginning. I think there's no machlokes. The Manos HaLevi would never disagree with the Trumas edition. But he does make a valid point. And it's an important point. And it was a Kodesh, one of the greatest Mekabolim. And it's a special schus to have the entirety of Klal Yisrael for hundreds of years being Mekaber Pnei Shabbos HaMalka with a song that he wrote. So my fundamental idea is we need to add the Manos HaLevi on top of the Tumas edition, but there's no machlokes. So anybody that wants to write a chumrah based on Manos HaLevi, that is okay with me. Like the Divrei Yoyo, like the Binyan Siyan. There is more achva v'reis if you send it, and the person sees he thought about me. I'm on his list. He made the effort. It's not just coincidence because we happen to meet that he's giving me Mishloach Manos. But to base a kul on the some soifer, that would be a problem. So after questioning the reasoning of the Manos HaLevi, I want to bring a few sources that support the Divrei Drash of the Manos HaLevi. Ibn Ezra. I quoted the Gemara that Mefuzar and Mefayred just encourages Achashverosh. You're not going to lose out. There's not going to be, the government won't lose out. They're not centered. They don't have, their industries or their social structure. They're just a little here and a little there. You can destroy them and nothing is going to happen. But the Ibn Ezra has a different interpretation. Mefuzar and Mefayred ben Umamim, she'aporid ishmi al ocher. כל כך הוא רק הוא לא, ולא די שדוסי שוינוס, אלה שלא ישמרו הדוסים והחוקים שיצא במלך. כל העם ועם ישמרו חוץ מהם. There are people, there are nasty people, והם נפרדים איש מהלכה. They don't know peace, they don't know harmony, and that is why they won't. So the Ibn Ezra is similar to the Manos Levi. Yes, he was speaking inevitably about the Jews. The Jews lack harmony, they lack love, they lack friendship, they lack brotherhood. So the Manos Levi is not all on his own with this interpretation. Seems to be the same in the Ibn Ezra. The Chidu says, what is Lech Knois es Kol Yehudim? Because they were mefuzar u'mefeirad. Because there was a lack of achdus. And Lech Knois es Kol Yehudim, bring them together as keneged mefuzar u'mefeirad. So once again, it will be similar. So the Chidu also says, on a different posuk, Lech Knois es Kol Yehudim, bring them together, because we need achdus. And in times of war and gzeirus, we need achdus. Toldos, the Toldos was one of the greatest disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Toldos was the first Hasidic sefer to come out from Talmidei Baal Shem. Sibes gzeirus omen haya shetzliach al yedei hapirud shoel ben Yisrael. B'zeh shedoshu Chazal, yesh lehem echad b'fuzar u'mefeirad. Homen's Hatzlacha was because there was a lack of achdus. V'letaken zeh amru Esther l'Mordechai Lech Knois es Kol Yehudim la'aseh shalom b'neihem u'kama shekosev hashlah. So the Ibn Ezra, the Chidah, the Talmud, three great Gedolim, each of them from a different world, from a different era, from a different time, but they all share the psat of the Manos Levi, Rash al Kabetz, Mafuzah Amafayda. There was a lack of achdus, and that is why Esther says Lech Knois es Kol Yehudim, and that is an additional meaning and depth and a profound thought about Mishloach Manos Yisrael. It is not only about the food, it is not only about Sudas Purim, but it is also bringing achdus. And in times of gzeirus, in times of war, what we desperately need is achdus. Yiratzon. We're living in a difficult time, and it's a source so much division between one community and the other, between Charedim and Chilonim, and amongst the Charedim, different approaches and different. So each and every one of us needs to do his utmost to bring harmony, to bring ahava, v'achva, v'shalom, v'reis to our communities and to the greater community of the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. Yehi Ratzon. There are more rights. If you forgot Yalav Yavai, you should say in Berchas Hamazon, Urachamon hu yasa lano nisam nefois Hashem shosis olav Yiseinu. So today's shir was about Mishloach Manos. Just want to remind you all that the Rambam writes that Matonos Levyonim is a greater mitzvah than Mishloach Manos. And a person should be Mahadar Yoisa Matonos Levyonim than Mishloach Manos. So I'm sure that you all are Mekayim the mitzvah of Matonos Levyonim. Local communities, local needs. Very well-known shul, there's some sefer Islam involved in Yoredeya, there's some sefer writes a person should part of his tzedakah money sent to Eretz Yisrael. So if any one of you wants to also give Matonos Levyonim to any Eretz Yisrael, I could be helpful, and you could send money into our foundation in America and just earmark it for Mishloach Manos, and I will see to it should be distributed. So we should share the service. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be Geizer Toivos, we should see Nisim and Aflois once again, and we should be Zoichev and Afoichu, Asher Yishlet, Vayehudam, Heimo B'Seneim. I'll let's take a Purim to all of you.